Okay, team. Today is the last day of class, and hopefully, and just a point, we're gonna get dirty. We're gonna get busy with HubSpot today. We're gonna show us how to put the data model inside HubSpot. We actually have Brian from the RP team that's going to show how we do it in our HubSpot instance, a step-by-step guide. And it's going to probably, it will capture the majority of the time we talk today. Okay, so without further ado, let us get into today's lesson. Okay, so today's lesson, I'm going to show you this. And the reason I'm not already showing, we also have a template. I just want to show you is we have a template that has everything we've covered that you'll be getting after. That we'll be sharing after this with what RevOps is, the complete framework, along with every single model we have covered. So you can use this for your and apply it to your business and be able to think through these and hopefully be able to influence some spend and RevOps initiatives inside your company and begin to have a more strategic role and not just putting out fires. Okay, let us start here. My screen is loading. Okay, here we go. So this is where we started. You can see where we've been. Class day one. We talked about what is revenue operations and why do people care about it, and that it is a science. We then went into our business model. That set the stage for us yesterday to go over lots of models, go to market, data, growth, math model, and we didn't get to the tool stack. So we're actually going to we're going to cover the tool stack today. So if we look at day three, this is the final day. We're going to talk about the tool stack. We're going to talk about RevOps pyramid, and we're going to do RevOps a fundamental, which is customer lifecycle, getting inside your instance. My intent is for this to finish by 10:30. If it does not, that is okay. We will finish the final portion of the course in preparation for our exam. In the order of this, I'm actually going to do the tool stack, and then we're going to do customer lifecycle. Post that, we'll go into the pyramid and talk about lift as well. Throughout, as usual, I'll be answering questions, and we will go through. So I see a question just came through, and let me first go over our day two review, and then I will answer it. So day two review, what did we cover? This was in the green. We did the sales, we did the full go-to-market motions, that there's no such thing as one go-to-market motion. There's actual multiple sales, marketing, and CS functions. All of them must be aligned. We then talked about the growth model and where we sit within that. Are we in MVP, product market fit, go-to-market fit, and then each go-to-market motion that we're achieving must actually finish in its own growth trajectory. Or if you want to start a totally new go-to-market motion, you actually have to start over, and you've got to take your enterprise. If you're a PLG motion and you want to enterprise, you have to start all the way over at MVP and go through it. And so they're seen as separated revenue streams. We then took that to the data model. And so how do we apply this in a way where we can measure and begin to look at RevOps, apply science and say, okay, what measures can we do with volume, conversion, and time? Then we went to the math model to talk about where do we experience exponential growth and how do we think about where we prioritize and how you can start breaking down those conversion metrics and time metrics to very specific things to help you think about best practices. That's what we talked about. So visually, here's the go-to-market motion. As we mentioned, there are 5 different go-to-market motions traditionally thought about that exist through sales, marketing, and CS. They all have different markets. They have different ACVs. And they have different number of deals per year as you think about them. They also have different levers of growth. Pro users being reputation users, products, SMBs being events, thought leadership, and content, and enterprise being people, brand, expertise-based relationships. And so this is the growth model. And we talked about how each one of those go-to-market motions we just talked about actually fits within this curve in some way. And RevOps is applied separately, right? The conversion metrics are applied separately to each go-to-market motion to understand where we're at in this journey of scaling up from prototype, MVP, product market fit, go-to-market fit, and then scale up. And RevOps job really starts at when you hit that $1 million AAR into the 10 million, and then you have everything you need and you're just building on top. We had the data model, which is where you start, where you get insights into what's happening inside of your business. We talked about it. It's a bow tie. So on the left side, it gets smaller. On the right side, it gets larger. And that these are non-linear journeys that are happening. There's compound because you are renewing over and over again with the same customer. So you have compound growth on this side. But a person only goes one time through the sales process. We talked about volume metrics, time metrics, conversion metrics, and identify the stages and what people are saying throughout and how people are thinking through moving through them. We then talked about how each go-to-market is examples of how they would be put into the data model and why you have to look at them separately and think about them independently so that you can measure and execute. And as a follow-up, we had, okay, what do all these mean? And just a guide so we can talk common languages around us professionals about V1, V2, all the way to V8, CR or conversion rates 1 all the way to C5, and then T1 all the way through T7. And that gives us the ability to start talking in the same. So if I'm talking about the sales cycle, I know I'm talking about T4. If I'm talking about our post-customer metrics, I know I'm talking about V5 to V8. And it just allows us as professionals to start getting really good at our craft. And so this is the revenue engine framework. This is the math model we went over to talk about exponential growth. And compound growth, this is not a linear. If you make a small impact on conversion, it has an exponential impact. Each 1 degree better actually has larger benefits. It's not linear in the way it grows. On the right side, it's compound. So when we think about, as we move to subscription-based models, we should spend way more time thinking about our CS teams, where traditionally we have not, because that's where a lot of growth, upsell, renewal, cross-sell is occurring. Then this is example is you can start, and there's many. So like sales ops, right, is an entire discipline. Like people have made a living thinking about just from this like engaged to committed, right? So you think about how many small, like how are you doing commissions? How are you tracking goals inside of it? How are you looking from one meeting to the next? How are you running disco call or discovery calls? How are you doing demo calls? How are you sending proposals? How are you sending quotes? Are you doing electronic signatures? There's just so much you can do to affect conversion ratios inside these. But like when you think about it, it gives us a way to start saying, where am I focusing? Where's my cliffs? Where are my misses at? And I can focus it, and it has. And it's just showing the math that it's exponential. If you decrease one meeting, it actually increases it has a large impact on your conversion ratio. Man, that was what we covered yesterday. Very heavy. This is what's hard about revenue operations. Is you come in fresh, you can't, or you can, but I highly recommend against it. Is how I learned. You can't just jump in and start like going around in a CRM, because there is no way you will do it right the first time. That is, I wish something like this was here for me when I started, because I could understand how to effectuate change and prioritize actions. Now you have a way to think through it. And you have a way to start, you're not just going in ambiguous darkness, you can start attacking, thinking through it more methodically. Okay, so before we get into tool stack, we have questions, and I'm gonna answer these two. So I have one from Anthony. Matt, how does the role of RevOps relate to a product manager, data product manager? Because I see some overlap, of course, in a reduced scope. So yes, so as we talk about I'm gonna go back because I think this is helpful to see this. Product manager. If you go to product manager, PLG growth, what is the growth mechanism of a PLG motion? The product. So what is a product manager doing? Like they are having to think about the data that is signaling when someone's signing up and like sign-ups to trials, PQLs opportunities, and they are helping think through how to affect the conversion ratios so that we can end up with more end users that are activated and on the right side of the funnel, renewing and becoming brand ambassadors. So yes, product managers and data product managers are core competency inside the larger science of revenue operations that fit squarely in this data operations that I would call part, understanding how the data mix is, how you segment it, doing data standardization. There's a whole host of things that come after that. So yes, that's how it fits. If your company is working with multiple go-to-market motions, from a CRM perspective, to track conversions separately, do you recommend using a separate pipeline for each of these? This is a question that is a large debate in CRM in communities, in like the RevOps space. What I mean by that, there's another big one. Example would be, should I have a lead object or a contact object? Or track everything in contacts. Like these are some of these big debates. If you go into a Salesforce ecosystem, they come out of the box with a lead object. HubSpot says we don't have lead objects, we only track the contact level. This is another one. I just want to be frank. There are a lot of enterprise businesses, and I say enterprise businesses, I mean, there are a lot of large businesses that choose to have separate CRMs, literally separate instances where separate teams work in because of this data collection. I honestly, if I'm talking about what I think is best, and if you can afford it, and in the way you set it up, I actually recommend you have separate CRMs if you're doing different go-to-market motions. Now, this might sound crazy, but it's not. Is like that is how you're going to be able to set these up and have conversion ratios, is having separate CRMs. But then gets to the question, how do you standardize on the back end? There's a whole genre of net new tool stacks we're going to be talking about here in a second called revenue or RevOps enablement platforms like Syncery that help you then think about going back and keeping all of that data together so that you can then, and that's why, do data operations and product managers have a role? Yes, because to run multiple go-to-market motions means you have to understand entity data, you have to understand ERDs, entity relational databases intimately, and you can speak data as a core competency. And so, yes. And what if we can't? If you can't, you're going to have to make multiple customer life cycles and totally different triggers, and it's going to get complicated. And you're just going to have to give up some data integrity and likely just have everyone in the same journey, and you're going to have to segment it by product type. And so there are some just segmentations you would do, is how you're going to think through it, instead of, and you're just, it won't be, example, if you have two-stage in PLG, you could technically use prospect email SQL and then segment by the product they're purchasing instead of having separate CRM. So there are ways to do it. I'm just saying, if you have the possibility, I would recommend having two CRMs because that's the best for data. Yeah, two separate instances of HubSpot, correct. Eli, that's what I'm saying. Did I get that right? As RevOps, you should firstly look at these models and especially manage your proper reporting of those metrics, data model, before you start doing a specific project, because this will show you where your highest. Yes, yes, yes. That is the correct summary. Is if you don't have these, if when we come in as RevPartners, and I'm talking to someone, I'm asking these questions. Can you measure? Can in your instance, we asked this yesterday, 75% of people said they couldn't. This is my first question. Can you tell me with complete confidence that you have every one of your in your CRM record in the correct lifecycle stage? And it flows through. And if you can't, then that's where we start, because that is the very basis of all science, as we can measure. Because if you can't measure, then you can't iterate and you can't prove hypotheses. Should life cycles be tracked in the same pipeline as a sale, or should they have a new pipeline? We'll go over exactly how to do life cycles today, and Brian will go through it, and we'll show you. It'll be a step-by-step guide with visuals inside of HubSpot instance today. Can one use the same HubSpot instance with ring-fenced ownership based on teams versus separate CRM? Yes, you could do permission-based and separate it. The issue isn't the permission-based. The issue is you need to have segmentation so that you can say, hey, I want to see all MQLs for this product line and do conversion ratios. And you're going to have Ops Hub to do this, because you're going to have to create separate data models, which is an enterprise level Ops Hub. So just the point to have separate go-to-markets, you have to have Ops Hub enterprise. Okay, that's all the questions. Let's get for today's. Let's get in it. I'm so excited about today because you're actually going to get inside HubSpot and you're going to talk to someone who is more smart than me over this. So let's go to the tool stack. Okay. Tool stack. We're going to have some questions. First poll for today. I have a question for everybody. And let's see if we get it right. How many SaaS applications on average, and this should be destined, on average, do companies employing 10 to 50 employees use? How many? So 10 to 50. And so this is a company that is about, $5 million, or this is a company that's $1 to $5 million in ARR. How many SaaS applications are they using? And before we find out what everybody has as a mass amoeba of RevOps students has said, let us see if anybody, let's raise our hand and see if anybody, let's have one person make a guess out loud, or educated guess out loud, and why you think that. Is anybody? Jonathan. Let's go. What do you think, Jonathan?
I kind of went back and forth between 18 and 24. I think in the end, I ended up voting 18, but could have easily gone 24 as well. I think about all of the various applications that our revenue teams use, and then there's so many others that the engineering team, the design team, all that sort of thing use as well. And there's certain products that are very similar, but engineering likes this one particular feature better. Sales likes this one particular feature better. So there's a lot of overlap there. I see Scott's comment, I bought HubSpot so we could cut the stack by 5. That is one of the main reasons why we are currently in a trial of HubSpot, exploring it to see if we can cut that tech stack or that tool stack down a little bit. So yeah, I kind of said 18 or 24. I would be shocked if it was 13, but I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if you told me it was 43.
Ooh. Well, I'm gonna pull out 3 things. Jonathan, thank you so much. Everybody give Jonathan a hand clap. I think that first off, he's right. So the amoeba that is us have said 38%. It goes with 18 and 24 goes with 24. So we are sitting on 24 to 18, which is exactly what Jonathan said. So let's pull out some of the things he has said here. So number 1, great point. We talk about SaaS applications. We're not just talking about the revenue team here. We're talking about the entire company. And so there are a lot of SaaS applications that go across the product team, the HR team, any team, right? There's always some kind of SaaS. People are SaaSing everybody up and down. It's just the point of where we're at today. So let's go. The answer is 24. So on average, you're employing 10 to 20 to 50. Now, what's interesting about this is this 10 to 50 is not talking about new companies. There's actually a stat by Better Source. If you go to the source here, when it has afterwards, it says new companies that have started in 2020 or later in their first 2 years have up to 47 SaaS companies. So this is actually averaged down because we are concluding some traditional businesses that have just yet to optimize or start automating. They're still using manual processes. So still incredible number, 24. But let us talk. What happens? What happens when we go to over 200 employees? Let's talk about this. Now, here are our numbers. So we already know that it's larger, but how? What is it for the average organization in 2021? Had an average number of SaaS applications of what number? What number? I'm gonna take our future panelist to unmute and ask Brian, what number do you think it is?
I think it has to be 110.
Has to be. Okay. Why?
That just feels right.
Okay. Well, I think it's other things. I've seen these slides already. The number is 110. So let's look at and see what we have let's look at this. Y'all are right. So we look at this 97 to 110. Guys and gals, that's an extraordinary amount of numbers. And you look at this 50 to 200, that's really, for almost every percentage point of increase in employees, we have that same amount in SaaS. So my point is, there are a lot of SaaS. So there are a lot of SaaS in companies today. And let's talk about what categories they're in and how do we think about these, what problems they may present, and then how do we think about how we're putting together our tech stack as we're attempting to be great stewards of our company's money, time, and generate revenue. So number one is, I like to think of these as platforms. So these are the platforms that exist no matter what. So you hear things like CRM, which is customer relationship management, marketing automation platform, maps, CMSs, content management systems. These are the big platforms that where they're like, you have to have them. If you have a modern business, some people say that there's no such thing as a company that is, every company is a tech company today because we all run on digital platforms. The truth is that's true. We have, so that's what that recognition is. Next are integrated apps. These are apps that support that platform or as part of the ecosystem. So many times these are proposals, CPQ, configure price quotes that you need more optimized. You need like a more sophistication, contact enrichments like Lucia or Zoom Info or Clearbit, right? All these other platforms that integrate with your systems, but you're touching the data in your core platforms. Then you have standalone. And so they don't integrate with your core apps. You're still doing this. So many times, like Hootsuite is a great example. You are doing social media scheduling and it doesn't integrate with your CRM today. You have scheduling apps. Sometimes people will use, Calendly is not a good example because it can be integrated. You also have sales engagement platforms. They can stand alone, not necessarily integrated. You could consider other core platform, which depends on how you're working. But there's just like all these different, standalone means non-integrated applications that are working inside of your things. Last are third-party services. This may be a call center. This may be somebody doing outbound prospecting for you to secure meetings. It might be an agency that's doing inbound, or it might be a RevOps consultant helping you think through all of this. So these are like the four, when you're thinking about how am I standing up my tech stack and my services, these are your four categories that you're thinking about through it. As you think about these platforms, rules to live by, and die by. They are adoption. If you spent any time, whatever, if you knew me before this is like my biggest, what I like to yell and scream on top of all mountains, is adoption is the most important. It is the greatest good. If it's not adopted, the process doesn't exist. If it's not adopted, the platform doesn't exist. Nobody talks about the ROI of email because why? We all use it 100% of the time. So we don't worry about how much it costs. We just use it. Adoption before what process? You have to think about adoption before the process. Less databases. Every time we include an application is a database. So when we use the word SaaS database, same darn thing. Every time we add another piece of software, we're adding another piece of databases. And anytime we can make less of them, we should, because managing databases is not an additive. It's not like a linear. It becomes exponentially more difficult from 2 databases to 3 databases to 4 databases to 5 databases. So be good stewards of the data. Less is more. Integrated. If it ain't integrated, you can't measure it. And if you can't measure it, you can't do what? You can't actually do revenue operations because you can't measure it, which means you can't monitor it. You can't have hypotheses. You can't iterate. You can't change. And so you can't see how it affects conversion ratios. And whatever app you pick, it needs to be, you need to think about it is, how does this application, or how does this SaaS product help me affect, and how does it fit within my data model? because that will enable you to talk about ROI and will have the language. I am adding this application because I think it's going to affect the conversion ratio from 1 to 3. Today, that conversion ratio is this. My hypothesis is we'll be able to put it towards this, which will have a net impact on our revenue of this. It becomes very easy to justify your SaaS applications if it fits within the data model. It doesn't fit, then don't use it and don't purchase it. So, we'll just forget. I missed some automation. Okay, so here's our big 5. I like to call them the big 5. Every company you ever use is going to have these. So number one big 5 is a CMS. CMS stands for Contact Management System, which is translated into regular speak as your website. So these are where everybody has a website. You all have a platform where you manage your content on your website, and everybody has one. Here are the big, and so the big 3 and this player that I hear and I run into a lot, there's more, I'm just doing big 3, HubSpot, WordPress, and then increasingly like Webflow. CMS. Your CRM. If you aren't using a CRM, you're not running you're doing revenue operations extremely poorly. I will just tell you that. I don't care how sophisticated your Excel is, you're probably not doing it. Your RevOps is not your competitive advantage. In fact, you have just a period. So all modern companies run on some form of a contact or of a customer relationship management platform. The big 3 are HubSpot, Salesforce, Dynamics. There are a host of these: Pipedrive, Mixmax, Copper. But these are the big 3 that have the largest amount of market share that you think about. Next is marketing automation platforms. You have HubSpot, which is where HubSpot cut its teeth. This is where it grew up. This was originally before it was anything else. It was just a marketing automation platform, marketing hub. There didn't used to be a marketing hub. It was just HubSpot was marketing hub. That's all it was. You have Pardot, which Salesforce bought, and you have Marketo. So these are the 3 biggest maps, marketing automation platforms. Ticketing and service is you have to have a service platform that lets you respond and track customer issues, have service portals for help desk, or be able to manage every piece of the contracts, what deal and what product and service they did. Are they ready for an upsell, renewal, et cetera? You have to have this. The 3 big are Zendesk, Freshdesk, and HubSpot. Now look at this. And last, ERPs, or built like just ERPs are enterprise resource planning, which again, nobody like what the heck does that mean? It's really the system where you bill people. You collect your account receivables, meaning you owe me money, and account payables mean I owe other people money. And that is where your billing and your revenue recognition is occurring inside the system. This is where your finance team lives and breathes. Many places, this is actually the source of truth. ERP system is not the CRM. And you see this is what most people are using when I see, and depends on where your life cycle is. QuickBooks, NetSuite, and M4 are the big 3 here that have the largest market share. Okay, so you look at this, these are the big 5. It doesn't matter what business you run, you got all 5 of these. And if you don't, you should. So you have all 5 of these. Now, you see it on this piece of paper, it's blaringly obvious. Let's get into this. So here's what we're doing. Yes, I can't draw straight lines, but this is me drawing. A lot of people, businesses, well, Salesforce, Marketo, Webflow, Freshdesk, NetSuite, very common, like very, very common 5. Many times they'll have multiple instances of Salesforce because they acquired a company or they're running different go-to-markets, and they'll have 2 or 3 instances of Salesforce going into one Marketo. They'll have 3 different Webflows. They may have actually a Webflow and a WordPress because they have 2 different websites. And then they have one consolidated. And you see how it just gets dirty. Next is you may have Salesforce, very common, Salesforce, HubSpot. Then they have WordPress, which I just missed it, Zendesk, and QuickBooks. Another very common. People will do Salesforce, HubSpot as a marketing automation platform. But when I show it this way, and can anybody else see it? I know this is a HubSpot centric, but this is why I love HubSpot. Come on, like what are we doing with our lives? Like just use HubSpot for everything. Talk about making the database easier. This is why I have Salesforce certifications. I have Microsoft Dynamics certifications, and this is why I don't focus over there. Hopefully it's very clear. We're going to make this a bit more clear here in a second. So these are our big 5. By the way, I know I didn't put Ops Hub here just because Ops Hub usually is not for everybody at all the time. And how we fulfill that function is different. So let's like start picturing this by go-to-market motions. So I think this is helpful. So when you think about your go-to-market motions, like what do you have to have every single time? So your marketing go-to-market motion has to have a map. You have to have a CMS, have to. Now, if you're doing inbound, you're doing, you have to have a platform for SEO, which I prefer SME Rush. You have to have a blog that is your CMS platform. You have to have a way to make landing pages, which could be unbound. Use HubSpot. You could use, sometimes people use forms like Gravity Forms. You have to have a chat bot, which may be Intercom. You have to have webinars. You see, it just gets, stops. For marketing, go to marketing prospecting. You need a tool that can do sequences. You have to have a database where you can pull contacts from to make lists. You have to have email validation, so you're not sending to bad emails and hurting your email deliverability. You need an IP address. For ABM, third-party intent, email signature, so that you can change your email based on who you're talking about, the next event you're going to, direct mail, and then start hosting events and going and sponsoring events. And then targeting, these very target accounts, gifting, events, and even ads. Sales, I'm going through this super fast because I'm going to get to something here. Sales go-to-market motions. You always have to have a CRM. Doesn't matter what you do. But then PLG, you need product data, and you have to have reverse ETL. And so it's like a high touch or a census or a Synchrony into your CRM. So you can then have sales assist and be able to have your PQLs. One stage is you need an inbound calling system, like a call rail that's calling in to HubSpot. You have to have conversational intelligence so you can get better. 2 stages is you need the sequencer because you now have the SDR. You need a dialer to be able to call outbound to. You need calendar and scheduling links. You need digital signatures. As you go to field sales, you need CPQ and complex deal hubs. You need ways to make proposals and customize proposals. And for named accounts, you need proposals, but you also need to start responding to RFPs. So you'll see, like, this is not all inclusive. For CS, you have to have your ticketing system or your customer, like how you're capturing all communication. You need, for a community-led CS, you have to have a knowledge base, like a platform that lets you write, how do I do something here? And that people can self-serve themselves and fix their problems on their own. You need a chat feature inside the application itself and outside. Help desk, go-to-market motion, you have to have a service portal where someone can log in and submit a ticket. Also a chat. For these account management portions, you need, which is volume, segment, and named, you have to have NPS scores, CSATs surveys, and even surveys to go out, plus all this other. So you'll see is we just talked about those top 5, but it can get pretty crazy. And this is not all. This is just our revenue teams and why there's so many SaaS applications. That is fun stuff. I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to ask questions, and then we're going to get to a drawing, which is a template that will help us put our tool tech together. So our product is standalone for our own portal. However, we also offer an API for customers to integrate concurrently with their dashboard. Does this make us a hybrid between integrated app and standalone? Yes. Yes. Yes is the answer. What makes an integrated app is if you have an app that has been ordained by Salesforce, by HubSpot, by Pipedrive as an official app. And if you just have open APIs, I would still call that a standalone, because to have open APIs means you must have that whoever you're working with is now still managing their database. They have to send it in, they have to transform that data, and they have to submit it in. So it is not integrated. It's a mix between the two. I would say it leans further to standalone. Can you expand on what you mean by less databases? Data warehouse is a big thing at the moment, e.g. Snowflake. What I mean by less databases, and this is what's important, every one of these applications, which I'm going to show you here, I'm going to show you in this next picture. Every SaaS tool you use is a database, not just your AWS server, not just Snowflake, not just your SQL database or your SQL server. Every single SaaS application you have is a database. So when you say have less databases, I mean have less tools, period. I can always look at this and just consolidate your tool stack, is what this means. It does not mean have less Snowflake instances. It means have less tools, usually. Michelle, follow up to previous question. When when should we add, or how do we know to add a data warehouse or a CDP, which is or a common database platform to our tech stack? So CDPs, there's things like Segment. You've heard about them. They're Syncary. When you do it, I think like the trigger is when you have multiple go-to-market motions inside your database. Or like there's like two triggers. Are you doing multiple go-to-market motions? If you are you doing PLG? Yes. And are you then doing them in separate CRMs? If you are, you have that CDP. So CDPs are usually used when there's a product. So if you are doing PLG and you have a product where people are living in and they're doing actions, you need, and I don't call it CDPs anymore, I call them RevOps enablement platforms, because they are allowing us to do this measurement outside of the CRM and pushing it back so we can have our measurements, which are volume, conversion, and time. So that's how I think about when we have them. Okay, I'm gonna move from questions and I'm gonna go to our next portion for tech stack. So, and here I have general support, data quality, no code automation, visualization. Just know, like general support, you need it's some instance you have to have a data quality engine, which CDPs don't do. That's why I'm like, I think you can evolve post CDPs into things like Syncary or data or Ops Hub inside HubSpot itself. To the point. I'm gonna skip this for this. I just want to skip that for right now. Second, my PowerPoint has frozen because I don't want it to go over this slide right now. I just like skipped ahead really far with for no reason. I don't know how that happened. Here we go. Here's going back to the slideshow. The thing just skipped really far, so I don't know how that happened. Okay, so what I'm gonna go over now is how do I think systematically about as a template for us to create a tool stack. Now, I'm using a 2-stage company, and think about this. So here's how we do this. So first, it has to fit within our data model. So you'll see on the bottom, we have our data model, which we've talked about: prospects, MQLs, SQLs. I'm missing SALs here. The SQLs: commit, live, MER, LTV. So this goes from V1 to V8. And so inside of that, we automatically have our conversion and volume. It's not showcasing it here. I mean, our conversion and time. Inside that, we have our stages, so we know where it fits. At the bottom, I'm going to show here are our core platforms we need to have, and here are integrated apps for us to think about. So let's talk about this by marketing, by sales, and then by CS. What do we need? Let's visualize this. So this will give us a way. So you can fill these in. You'll get this template. You can fill it in yourself at the end. So you need a platform. And this platform for marketing, you have to have these two. You just have to. You have to have a marketing automation platform. You need a content management system. This could be ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, Marketo, whatever it may be, along with your content management, which may be web with WordPress, etc. Then on top of that, you need these things almost every single time. You have to have a lead scoring mechanism. You have to have a way to post social posts and a scheduler. You need website chat campaign attribution for you to be able to say how effective are my marketing activities, how are they affecting close one revenue in some way, influence what's working, what's not working. A database enrichment, because again, I'm doing 2-stage, so I'm prospecting, doing outbound motions. So I have to have the ability to create lists and enrich it. I need a phone dialer that is helping me make those phone calls, like an air call or a kick sweep, whatever it may be. And that's just the marketing side. Then on the sales side, I need a sales engagement platform, like an Outreach or a SalesLoft or a HubSpot. I need a customer relationship management, a CRM. And then on the integrated apps, I may need a CPQ or a configure price quote mechanism, like a Deal Hub or RevOps.io. I need call recording, like a Gong or HubSpot. I need a way to do digital e-signatures. I need a way to create proposals. I need a way it would be awesome if I could track commissions on what's going to happen. And I need a calendar service so that people can show up to meetings easily, and I can track inside the CRM when these are happening. Then as we move to CS, again, you've seen these, you have ticketing and billing and ERP systems for delivery. And then you need the ability to sit in surveys. You need the contract management system, and you need a way to look at renewals, cross sells, and upsells. So this is a basic, not sophisticated, basic. I'm going to say it again, basic, like modern tool stack anytime we start. And this big, that's 20 apps. If we're to do this the way we originally do, we usually do this, which every single one of those, a majority of companies, almost every single one of those are individual different tools. And so that's why an average is at 24. And this is just the revenue team. We're not talking about the HR team, which is using Gusto, and the finance team that has some other system on top of their billing. Or there's just more stuff. So let's live in a world. This is the world I live in. So it's not like it's a fake one. Let's live in this world. And I'm going to say this: is everything that's the same color is the same platform. What if your map, your CMS, lead score, social, website check, campaign attribution, phone dialer, sales engagement platform, customer relationship, calendar service, digital service, call record, configure price, quote, ticketing, we're all in the same darn platform? Wouldn't that be great? And then if you look, you still have that data, your data enrichment, systems like Zoom Info, commission like QuotaPath, and billing ERP like QuickBooks. This is a real world. This is the world I live in. This is the world because I use HubSpot and surveys, contract management, renewals. So I've taken 20 applications and I now have 5. Now we talk about how do we do RevOps? Like part of doing RevOps is just thinking through the ability to measure your data, to actually have accurate data. And having accurate data means having less databases to manage, and because then you can apply science better. So just remember this. This is not me. Yes, I love to sell HubSpot. I just wanted to why do I have a love affair with HubSpot? This is why I love it so hard. So I like to say this all the time. Again, if you listen, what is revenue operation professionals need to pick their weapons of choice, because when you go in, you will have to know how to wield these. And we're going to go into a little bit just doing the measurement in HubSpot. It's wicked hard. It's not easy. It's not something you can just wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I know how to do this. It takes testing and it takes understanding how the intricacies of the platform. You need your weapon of choice. And just because you know how to use a short sword doesn't mean you know how to use a scimitar. They have different styles. And while you can pick them up and you can still be deadly with one, you can be an expert with one and basic in another. We can't pretend like you can do every single system. You can't. You need to make a career getting good. Pick your weapons of choice. If you haven't listened to this video, I typed in weapon of choice today. It is freaking awesome. And it's literally called weapon of choice. It has nothing to do with it, except if you haven't seen this, go watch it. It will, and consider it inspiration for you to pick up your weapon of choice. It's amazing. In fact, I say everybody stop what you're doing right now. Type in weapon of choice 2001 and watch it later. It's awesome. Okay, so hopefully I say, how are we thinking this? You now have this, you take the data model we have, you can think through your tool stack, and your job is to make the most cohesive, integrated tool stack possible that will allow you to execute and think through your data model. Then, so with that, here's where we're at now. We've talked about our business model, our go-to-market motions, our growth model, data model, math model, tech stack. Now, how do we measure? Step number 1, how do we apply and start measuring inside our CRM? Let us get into that. I'm going to answer questions, and I'm going to give the floor to Brian. Brian, this is a point. It's okay if it takes longer than 30. We'll just do it just as a point. Okay, I'm going to answer some questions as we go. What tech stack should be your master platform where you build around the tech stack? There's, I'm going to tell you what happens. Traditionally, this is your CRM. So whatever CRM it is, then that's what you're building everything off of. So it's really Microsoft Dynamics, HubSpot, or Salesforce. And then you build everything else off of it. And so when you think about your weapons of choice, you need to get really good in the ecosystem of choice. What do you do for data integrity, data validation, and deduping? Ops up is a really good way of doing that for data integrity in HubSpot. There's also a tool called InCycle that we've used in the past that allows you connect it to your database. It will run, you put in rules, and it will dedupe or transform or capitalize, whatever. Ops Hub does that same function, and it's a good tool for those. Does RevOps and data analysis converge? If so, where? I mean, hopefully I say this. RevOps is the science or the empirical analysis and science of generating revenue, which inherently means you're doing data analysis and understanding it. There is no convergence. They're the same darn thing. You can't actually think about revenue operations and not be doing data analysis. Is a core function, like creating ETL, like just a period. If you're tracking long-term customer value, should a CRM not be considered mandatory for customer service as well? Yes, and this is why I'm a big proponent of your, and so here's the hard thing. When you're thinking about your LTV and these like SaaS metrics, is your ERP has all your billing. So what a lot of, because CRMs are not run well, because it's the sales team and you're looking at bookings inside a CRM, and we usually don't pull in our ERP information. What happens is your CS team actually uses the ERP as your source of truth. And so you can get all your bookings and you can get all your contract data from there, pushes it in. And so that's where disconnect occurs. And so preferably you want your sales, marketing, and CS teams all in the same system, looking at the same data. You're pulling in that ERP information, like have they paid their invoice? what's their contract value? You want that pulled into it and not vice versa. So you're looking at the customer, not the billing information we're pushing out. Jonathan, that's my answer to you there. My last question before we move on, talking about getting into HubSpot. How would you integrate an outbound prospecting motion with HubSpot's term of service, only allowing contacts to be brought into the system with prior permission? Everyone close your ears. Everyone close your ears. I mean, this happens daily. I work with so many customers that have Apollo.io as a database that they or Zoom info, and you say that these people are my ICPs, they're my personas. They pull them into the database. You then route them to the correct SDR team, and then they use sequences to prospect into them. That's how you get around it. You just do it anyway. I mean, that's what a lot of people do, for better or worse. Just telling you the truth. That's how it's done. The other way to get around it is, instead of using HubSpot, you can use SalesLoft, which is or Outreach, which are specific sales engagement platforms that don't have that at all, and their entire life is built around helping SDRs do multi-channel sequences and tracking those. They are better than HubSpot sequences. However, again, you have just introduced another database. So I actually prefer to do all sequences inside HubSpot if possible, because it's just know you have increased the amount of work you have to do to be able to measure appropriately. Okay, it is 10 o'clock. What we're going to do here, I'm going to pass it to Brian. Brian, I'll let you share your screen to do it. And Brian is going to go over. And Brian, hopefully it's okay if we don't, is we can bring this into the next session. But we're about to take our data model, everything we talked about, and say, how do we do this inside HubSpot? We have a step-by-step guide. You'll get all these slides afterwards. You'll have the templates, you have the appendices, etc., and look at it. But here it is. Everyone's been asking for it. Without further ado, Brian, the stage is yours. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right, good deal. So like Matt said, my name is Brian Kreutz. I'm a senior RevOps strategist at RevPartners, and I'm going to be walking through how to get lifecycle stages built into your HubSpot instance today. So a quick agenda here. I'll try to get this done within the next 30 minutes. We're going to define lifecycle stages and how they fit in the bow tie model that Matt's been going over the last 2 days. We're going to take a quick sneak peek at new functionality that's in beta right now for HubSpot that should be rolled out soon to everyone's organization. I'm going to review the steps to set up Lifecycle Stages properly in HubSpot. And then I'm going to go live into our instance to show you all the lists, workflows, and reports that we've built out to track this. So just as a review, the outputs in the business model that we're using to do this is a subscription business model with non-recurring revenue and monthly recurring revenue. Our sales go-to-market motion is two-stage. Our marketing go-to-market is inbound. Our CS motion is help desk, and our data model is bow tie. And the outputs, the main outputs here are how do we track the volume, time, and conversion of every lifecycle stage in your customer journey. Okay, so first, what are lifecycle stages? So lifecycle stage is a standard HubSpot property designed to correlate to the phases of your customer journey. So every single phase in that bow tie model that Matt's gone over is a lifecycle stage for the customer. This is a default property on both the contact and company objects, so everyone that has HubSpot has access to this. So some key elements to set this up. The definitions of lifecycle stages, this is the data model. This is exactly what Matt's been going over the last 2 days. You have to get this set up and be clear on your data model and the clear definitions of those breakdown points in order to implement this. Some data integrity here is that this is a one-way street. They cannot move backward. Once they move forward in the lifecycle stage, they can't move backward. That's because it's supposed to represent the furthest along the contact has gone within a customer journey. So if you have a closed lost opportunity, it still stays in that lifecycle stage because that's the furthest along the journey that it went to. You also can't skip stages. Now, it's very easy to accidentally force contacts to skip stages, but if you do, they will not be pulled into the conversion reports. And lastly, timestamps. All stage changes must have a timestamp. So the first day that a contact moves into the new lifecycle stage, we're going to timestamp that date, which factors in the time equation here. Okay, so what's new? So this is in beta in our instance. You might not see this in yours, but you should see it, at some point in the next couple of quarters, I would think. Under the contacts object, you'll see this new lifecycle stage tab. In here, you can do some automation here to sync stages, automatically set them based on a couple of things that happen, like contacts created, a deal is created, or a deal is won. And so this is some new functionality that HubSpot is rolling out. We don't recommend turning this on for when a deal is created or a deal is won, and I'll tell you why in a second, but it does help customers automate and move people through the customer journey. The right-hand side is brand new. You can configure it so you can add custom lifecycle stages to this and you can move them around, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But you can see here that after customer or commit, there's live, MRR, and LTV. These are brand new, and without this beta program, you weren't able to add custom lifecycle stages past customer. So this is big functionality that allows us to implement this bow tie model.
Brian,
okay.
I'm going to, as we go through this, forgive me, I'm going to do questions. I'm going to try to hold all questions to the end, but this is a good moment. There was a lot of questions around, in fact, this is an open debate. So just go in further about moving backwards. Like, why can't a contact move backwards, and what does it do to the data model if they do? So just further explain that. No, I'm saying some people say don't finish. Here, we're going to answer this question. Why is it such a big deal that, and how do you, if you can't move backwards, how do you manage to, like, how do you create segmentation? Just talk about it for a second, because it's such a big deal in part of how you do a data model.
Okay, so if you look down at the bottom, these are all the life cycle stages all on the customer journey in the bow tie model. The first stage up till committed is until a customer. After that comes after customer. These are meant to articulate the furthest along the customer journey that someone's been to. You can't move backwards because it's a one-way street, and you can't do a conversion rate if you just keep moving things forwards and backwards. And so it messes up the conversion rates. It totally changes the time between each stage, and you are unable to track the volume of these as well if you keep going back and forward willy-nilly based on this. Matt, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I just want to go on this is, yes, customer journeys are linear. And so there's a point and there's a whole, and we're not going, maybe this is class 2, right? How do you manage non-linear processes in a model that must be scientific. And so just know this is a fundamental, and you in lifecycle stages do not go backwards, because it literally destroys the data model if you move it backwards. So non-linear things are tracked on lead status, which we can go over in a separate point. Just know that. So as we go through. So Brian, thank you. I won't interrupt until the very end. We'll do all the questions at the end. So continue.
Okay, so these navy blue squares at the bottom were rectangles. These are our 8 lifecycle stages that we're going to go over. Everything from prospect, this might, the default status is lead. And so this, you might see lead in your instance, all the way through LTV. Now, 99.9% of businesses stop at customer, and they keep, they treat all customers the same. We know that, 80% of revenue comes from your top 20% of customers, but everyone keeps every customer on the exact same basis. And so we've implemented the bow tie model to track live MRR and lifetime value customers to further segment the best customers that are your most profitable. And so the current functionality before this new beta, it stops at customer. We are showing you how to enhance it past this to be able to track customers and further segment them once they go live for your customer success or customer experience team. So the output of this is conversion rates between each step, average time between each step, and volume within a time period of each step. So I like to see the end result before I kind of get into the steps. And so this is the end result, and I'm going to show you how to go into this. So before is on the left-hand side is that you can see the conversion rate is 0 for everything. This means that of the 618 contacts that were stamped as lead, not one single one went through every single one of these stages one by one. They might have skipped to SQL or skipped up to customer or skipped forward, but not every single one went through these. And you need to go through every single stage to have a proper conversion rate. On the right-hand side is after we implement this, what do these look like? Now we have proper conversion rates between each stage. Of the 3,000 leads, 28% of them become MQLs. Once they became an SQL, 15% of those became SALs or opportunity. Then 58% of those became customer, and it just trickles down all the way to lifetime value. Now, one thing to note about this data model, lifetime value is the furthest along. And so a lot of these customers haven't been with us long enough to be considered for this. This doesn't mean that they haven't converted to that stage. It just means they're not, it's not applicable yet because they haven't been with us long enough to achieve that. Because this usually happens about a year or two after they're a customer. And so before, if you guys go into your HubSpot instances and put in all of these different lifecycle stages here, your conversion rates, very rarely will you see a lot of contacts all the way being converted onto customers. With what we're about to go over, you should see a better conversion rate down. And that means these contacts have gone through each lifecycle stage properly. The second thing here is average time. And so these are standard HubSpot fields that you guys can pull up in your organization. This is average time between lifecycle stages. So at RevPartners, our average time between lead and customer is about 60 days. And then on the right-hand side, the average time from when a contact becomes an opportunity or an SAL to customer is 44 days. So we have like a 6-week sales cycle essentially on average. And so these are the two outputs, but to get to it, there's several steps you need to do. Okay, so it all sounds easy enough. You want conversion reports, you want average time to be correct, you want all this set up and automated in your CRM. But the problem is almost every single company does it wrong. And why is it so difficult? It's because, as I've talked to you before, if you skip a stage, it's not in the funnel report. Why? Well, you can't divide by 0, right? So it never hits the stage. You don't have that timestamp. You cannot use that in a conversion report. If it misses the list trigger and it automatically doesn't get added to the list, it's not going to be in the funnel report. If you have these automated triggers on by HubSpot and don't know exactly how they work, it's going to cause you to skip stages and not be in the funnel report. Also, once you move a stage forward, you cannot move backward. So if something accidentally skips MQL and goes right to SQL, you can't just automate it back to MQL and push it forward. You can reset it back to 0 and just clear out lifecycle stage completely and then have it go through each stage, but you overwrite your timestamp dates. And so these average in between right here, these will not show up correctly. And so skipping stages and then having to reset them, both of these things will cause errors in your data. And then down here, there's helpful checkboxes in HubSpot to help sync stages. But if you don't know exactly how these work, you're going to cause a lot of contacts to skip. Okay, so what is needed to complete this? Obviously, clearly defined lifecycle stages for your customer journey, triggers. And so I'll go over triggers, what that means, how to push contacts automatically through these lifecycle stages. We do not want sales reps or people on your team to manually be adjusting these ever. They should all automatically be triggered based on a clear and standardized process. And the reality is, to make all of this work, you need about 19 lists and 15 workflows. But the dashboards and the reports are endless. These all don't take, they don't take hours to create, but there is a high volume of them because we need to be so careful with not letting them skip stages and not having to reset them back to the beginning. But as you'll see, there's so many dashboards and reports you can make. So now there's 9 steps to do this, and I'm going to look at all these steps and then go into our HubSpot and show you how each of these steps are done. So we've already talked about defining stages and triggers, which I'll get to in a second. We obviously got to confirm the process aligns to triggers. And then the actual build within HubSpot is building lists, building workflows, resetting the lifecycle stage for incorrect contacts, turning on the inclusion workflows to get contacts in the correct stages, building the funnel reports, and then monitoring constantly to make sure the flow is working. So why is RevOps so important? Why is this a profession? This is very difficult to do. A sales manager that doesn't know RevOps cannot just do this. Like Matt said, you can't roll out of bed and just do this. You need to understand how the entire customer journey connects together. Everything from first interaction from a lead all the way through customers that are renewing on a yearly basis. So finance, customer success, sales, marketing, all have to be aligned and follow the same process. So let's hop into HubSpot real quick. So first in HubSpot, you'll see here, I'm in my settings. Down here under the contacts object is where this new lifecycle stage tab is. Again, it's probably not in your org. It'll be rolled out sometime in the future. They have all this cool automation here. You'll see I've got most of it turned off because I want to set when contacts automatically get moved to the stage. I don't want the system to do it. And so you can set up this, set up these if it's right for your business. And then down here is where you configure these. So this used to say opportunity. We were able to edit this and actually update the lifecycle stage name. I can also drag and drop this to a different stage. Now this order matters because this is how your conversion reports are being built. So make sure the order is correct, but you can move these around. You can add additional ones. You can add a stage down here. And so this is some of the cool functionality that HubSpot's delivering to add more value to their CRM. Now let's just look at a contact record to show you exactly where this lives. And so here's the lifecycle stage here. You can click into it, and this is why it's so dangerous. Just by clicking into it and moving from SAL to MRR and clicking save, I have now caused this to skip stages and it's going to be removed from my report. That is why you do not want people to manually do this. You want it to auto update based on list inclusion. So it's very helpful to see on the contact record, but it's very easy for people to accidentally move these forward. You do not want that to happen. Also, all the timestamps here are under the view all properties. So if you type in became a, you'll see all the timestamps here. So these are super, super helpful. You'll have to build custom ones for the custom lifecycle stages, but all these auto stamp, which is great because it tells you the exact date that it moves to that stage. So this is where you build in your average duration metrics right here. Okay, so that's where lifecycle stage lives within the backend. Now let's hop into contacts, the lists, and let's talk about triggers. So here you can see I've got my 19 lists in my customer lifecycle stages folder, and then I've got this organized by section. So I would encourage you guys to organize this to kind of keep everything organized within HubSpot. But essentially here we have our 8 inclusion lists for our 8 lifecycle stages. These are the triggers that allow people to correctly get into the right lifecycle stage. We also have our reset lists. These are people that are in the incorrect stage that we need to reset back to the beginning and get them into each stage. And then we also have, in order to get the reset list correct, we have to create another list. And then we have a couple miscellaneous ones here. So before I get into what these inclusion lists look like, let's talk a little bit about the triggers. So obviously everyone's business is a little bit different on the call, but these are some example triggers of what would cause a contact to move into this lifecycle stage. So for a lead or a prospect, this might be a targeted list upload, targeted outbound list. It might have some engagement, like opens a couple of newsletters, but it has not hit the MQL lead score threshold. So you're not passing this from marketing to sales. The MQL stage, this could be a form submission. It could be your lead scoring threshold where you're gonna, based on lead score, pass it from marketing to sales. It could be an event contact. It could be a webinar attendee. These are obviously warmer prospects and leads. SQL, sales qualified lead, this could be a demo request on your website. It could be a discovery meeting booked. It could be a conversation at the event. SL or opportunity, this one's pretty simple, at least for us it is. If a contact's associated to a deal, that means they're a sales accepted lead. The deal's been created. On the right-hand side, real quickly, customer, if a contact's associated to a closed won deal, so customer or commit. Live, for us, it means the customer has completed the kickoff call and the revenue engine diagnostic. This means they have paid their one-time fee in their first invoice, and they have actually begun onboarding with us. MRR, monthly recurring revenue. This can happen when a customer is cross-sold from non-recurring revenue to a recurring revenue package, or the customer completes the first term. So these are all the net new ones that not many company tracks. These are how you segment your customers a little bit further down the customer journey. And then finally, lifetime value. The customer is in the second or future term and has no specific contract end date. So what is lifetime value? Like, I'm a Spotify customer. I've used them for 10 years. There's no contract end date. I'm a customer forever until I'm not. HubSpot, same thing. We're on our second or third term with them. We're a customer forever. We've reached lifetime value for them. There's no specific end date. We're on auto renewal until we decide, to leave. Okay, so what we're doing is you need to work with your team to build these triggers for each of the lifecycle stages around your customer journey. The hardest part is making sure each of these things can be tracked within HubSpot. Discovery meeting booked. What does that mean? Do you have your calendar integration set up? Are they using the correct meeting link? Is it tagged correctly? How are you getting these contacts in the correct list? So all of this stuff has to be trackable in HubSpot, and that's the tricky part. Because when some of the company says, track every discovery meeting booked, that's all great and it makes a lot of sense. If it's not easy to track in HubSpot, it's not going to work. So let's go into some of these lists. So these are the inclusion lists, right? These are the lists based on the triggers that I saw. So I'll look up at MQL, customer, and MRR. So MQL, our lead score is greater than or equal to 6. If someone's in the database has a lead score greater than or equal to 6, they will be in this inclusion list. That means you need to get lead scoring set up, but that's for a different training. Or they've filled out a contact us form. And so if you have a lot of forms on your website, what I recommend to do is create a list of all of the forms on your website that might trigger a marketing qualified lead, and then use the list membership as the or statement here. We want to reduce the amount of times we're having to constantly update this. Update one list and then use list membership in multiple places throughout HubSpot. So that's the MQL inclusion list, for example. Lead score and form submission. The customer one, super easy. If a contact has an associated deal and the category or the stage is closed won, they become into the customer or the commit lifecycle stage. And then one of the custom ones we created, it's a little bit different, the MRR stage. So we have 2 different possibilities. If a contact has a deal in the MRR pipeline and the deal stage is active MRR. And so someone's question earlier, do you have different pipelines for different stages past customer? We do. We have a MRR pipeline, which only tracks customer that are in monthly recurring revenue terms. And in that, we have a deal stage called active MRR, which is everyone after their first term, before their second term. Or we have a non-recurring revenue upsell and cross-sell pipeline. So if they are closed won in that pipeline, that means they have been cross-sold to a new product or service that is now on recurring revenue. They've gone from non-recurring customer to now monthly recurring revenue customer, and so now they're included on this inclusion list. So those are the inclusion lists. You need to define your triggers for each of your lifecycle stages. So if you have a brand new instance, you can just, get rocking and rolling now. But a lot of you have had these built incorrectly, like we did, quite frankly, 6 months or a year ago. And so you need these reset lists to get everyone in the right bucket. So let's go to the SQL lifecycle stage reset list. So what this is saying is that if the current lifecycle stage is SAL or opportunity, as it might be called in your instance, SQL or customer, but it's not in the SQL opportunity or customer inclusion list. So this means that they are incorrectly tagged as one of these lifecycle stages, but they're not in the list membership for our inclusion list. So for each of your different triggers, you'll build a reset list as well. So customer as well, right? They're tagged as a customer, but they're not a member of the customer stage inclusion list. Okay, so you build reset lists. Now, just like I said, it's easier to build a list and have a list membership as one of the statements. Here, we've built another list to track all the inclusion lists that should be made up of this, and then people that do not adhere to this. And so that's where this last category is, these lifecycle stages greater than MQL. So these are just OR filters for the different inclusion lists greater than this lifecycle stage. I know this might not make a ton of sense right now, but if you go back and watch this and look at the contacts who might trigger this, it'll all begin to make sense. So you set up your list. That is the first step after you define your triggers, and make sure that all the lists have everyone that's needed in there. You'll know that your lists are correct if you go to like the MQL or SQL list, and every single person that is booked a demo in the last 6 months is included on this list. So if it's not, you'll have to update your triggers. Okay. Now from here, let's go into workflows. And so I've got a lifecycle stage folder under workflows. And here I have the workflows that will automate how contacts get into the next lifecycle stage. The first thing you need to do here is reset the lifecycle stage of contacts that are in the correct bucket. And so if someone manually moved a contact from lead to SQL incorrectly, and they should be in the MQL bucket, this is how you get them in the correct bucket, but not have them skip stages incorrectly. So I'll go through this quickly, but you can always pause the recording and kind of see the exact parameters we have built. The contact enrollment trigger is create data is known. This means every contact in the system is, goes through this at least once. You'll see it's turned off right now because you just run it once. Okay, we are checking the 5 or 6 reset lists. So these are all, if they're a member of one of these lists, they're in the incorrect lifecycle stage. The lifecycle stage that they are in does not hit the trigger or the parameters that we have just set up. And so let's start an opportunity. So in this branch, this contact is currently in the opportunity lifecycle stage, but it should not be in there. So how do we get it in the correct one? So we take every lifecycle stage to the left of opportunity or SAL. So, back here, right here at SAL, we're going to the left of SAL. So SQL, MQL, and prospect or lead. So everything to the left of it, that's what we're checking. So we're checking the inclusion lists of the 3 lifecycle stages before opportunity and seeing if it fits for one of those parameters. So here it's saying it's an opportunity lifecycle stage, but it should be in SQL because it's in the SQL lifecycle stage inclusion list. So if that's the case, our logic is clear the contact property, reset it completely, tag it as a lead, wait 1 minute, tag it as an MQL, wait a minute, tag it as an SQL. And what that's going to do is it's going to put those timestamps in for lead, MQL, and SQL so that these leads get properly reset in the correct lifecycle stage, but also get pulled into your conversion rate report. So this is a little bit tedious, but you set it up once and you're good. Now we check, okay, this person's an opportunity lifecycle stage, but it needs to be in the MQL lifecycle stage. Great. We're going to clear it, put it in lead, and then put it in MQL. Now this contact is in the correct bucket. It has got the timestamps for lead and MQL. It's no longer an opportunity incorrectly. And now we could begin to track in the conversion rate report. So you do this for all of your reset lists. So the customer one will have the longest one, and it's just like a inverted triangle. You've got the longest one opportunity because it has to go through each stage. And then if it just needs to be a lead or a subscriber, it's pretty simple. You just clear it and then put it into lead. I promise you, if you look at your instance, you're going to have contacts in the wrong stage because it just happens over time. So we've got opportunity reset, SQL reset, MQL reset, and each of these, as you go further right, have less and less triggers needed because there's less to the left of them. Now, why didn't I include MRR, lifetime value, and live in this? Because these are custom lifecycle stages. No one had ever been in any of these, and so I didn't have to reset them because no one had ever incorrectly been one of these because they're net new. So that's why I stopped at customer. Okay, so once you build this out, you turn this on, you go get a cup of coffee, and you just wait 5 minutes and let it run through the entire thing. And what's going to happen is it's going to reset everyone into the right lifecycle stage. So that's step one. It's getting everyone in the right bucket. Step two for workflows is getting everyone in the correct bucket going forward automatically. And so if I go to the opportunity stage, for instance, here is when a contact is now a member of the opportunity or SAL lifecycle stage inclusion list. This means they meet the triggers that you defined for the inclusion list. Our end goal here is to get them tagged automatically to the lifecycle stage of SAL or opportunity. This is the end goal. But again, we do not want to skip stages. And so how do we let someone who is currently a lead that jumps over and triggers the opportunity lifecycle stage inclusion list, how do we get them without skipping stages? Well, we check the timestamps here. So just like I said earlier on with the contact, all those timestamps are there. They're standard fields that we can pull into workflows. And so we're saying, okay, this contact wants to be an opportunity. Great, we're going to let them do that. But first, we're going to check, have you been a lead yet? If not, we're going to stamp you as a lead all the way back at the beginning. And so you want to skip from prospect to SAL, that's great, but you need to be tagged at these first. So great, now you're a lead. Now we're going to check, have you been in MQL before? If the answer is no, okay, great. We're going to put you in the MQL stage now and then wait a minute. The next question, have you been in SQL before? If the answer is no, the SQL data is unknown, then we're going to put you into SQL for a minute. And then finally, we're going to get you to where you belong, which is the SAL or opportunity stage. And so I'll go through this again. In order to not have contacts skip lifecycle stages, we have to check the timestamps of the prior lifecycle stages. And if they are unknown, we need to automatically put them in the prior lifecycle stages in order for them to get into the correct bucket without skipping stages. So tagged as a lead, tagged as an MQL, tagged as an SQL. Now, if this person has been properly tagged as a lead, MQL, and SQL, then they just go none met, none met, none met, and just automatically get tagged as an SAL immediately. And so it's not a hindrance for ones that are correctly through each stage. It's just a double check for ones that might have skipped. And so we have that for every single lifecycle stage now. The MQL one is smaller, right? Because you only need to reset it back to a lead. So it's a lot smaller. The customer one is going to be bigger because it has 4 lifecycle stages before it. But it's the same thing. So you build it out for customer, then you just duplicate it and you remove a couple branches and you're good to go. So if it's in the inclusion list for this lifecycle stages, we're going to check all the timestamps left of this and then go from there.
Brian, as we go, we're at 10:30 and there are 28 questions that people want to have answered by Brian. So it is time for our break. I want to say is, if you haven't seen it yet, clearly Brian is smarter than me. as y'all have talked about it. And this is a lot of work to get this set up in Thought. This will take processing. Templates are gone. You're going to have this recording, et cetera. And then Brian will be back. And I say this, Brian, hopefully you will be back. Brian will be back in 30 minutes. And we'll go through all the questions and answers because there's been a lot to go through into all.
Should we just, Matt, I probably have 5 more minutes to finish. Should we just power through the next 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's power through the next 5 minutes, and then Brian will be back to answer all our questions as we go through.
Okay. All right. So you've got the lifecycle stage reset built and you turn it on. Everyone's been reset. These are all built but turned off. You turn these on one by one in the order of the lifecycle stage from left to right on your customer journey. You turn them on, wait 2 minutes, turn the next one on, wait 2 minutes, turn the next one on. Turn them all on, then you turn the reset off and keep these on. This is how you can maintain these going forward with preventing skipping stages. If you have custom lifecycle stages, you can easily build a timestamp where if it hits the inclusion list or hits one of the triggers, you can set the date stamp to the date of step. So a lot of these timestamps will be easy to build in. You can use these date stamps in a custom calculation property as well. Okay, now at the end, we can go into reporting. So this is just a standard conversion report, a funnel report that you can make, anyone can make within HubSpot. And now we can literally, the possibilities are endless. And so this is the same report I showed, but if we want to add by original source is only, paid search, organic, and organic social, we can update this. And now we have conversion rate for that. If you only want it to be from contacts owned by our CEO, Brendan, you can update it by that and we'll update. If you want to create date is, last 90 days, you can literally build thousands of reports and get whatever you want. So if you want Q1 conversion rates, Q2, by channel, by source, by contact owner, by geography, US, EMEA, Europe, you can do all that and you'll have conversion rates set up for each of these. Whatever you want, country, any single property on the opportunity, you can now segment by. Well, I guess we don't have any in the United States, but that's the point here. You can also change the date right here and make it super customizable. So to get to that, create report, funnels right here, very easy. Second thing is the average time between customers. So these are standard fields right here that are going to pop up. Time to move from lead to customer. This is standard that HubSpot does out of the box. And again, you can add any kind of filter you want and customize these for, for SDR, for contact, for original source, for lead form submission, from all this stuff, you can customize it. And so now with all of these steps, you're able to track the conversion rate from each of the lifecycle stages, the time it takes on average between each of them, and the amount in each of these. And you can customize the filters to whatever you want to get the reporting you need. If you can get this correct, you will be better than 99% of RevOps professionals in the world. And you should, your company should be very happy. This is hard to do, but if you can do it, I promise you, you will have a long and successful career in revenue operations. And with that, I will pass it back to Matt.
I'm about to cry. Brian, that was so beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Let's give hand claps to Brian. He will be back. He will be back to answer all our questions. But this is, there's nothing easy about this. And so now you see why we have to have the theory, because then we know what questions to ask when we have the data right, so we can start answering questions very, very, very quickly. What's the litmus test for RevOps? How quickly can you answer questions? And if you have your data right, you can answer very quickly, as Brian just showed. Okay, Jan, I'm going to pass it back to you, and we'll be back at 11. Yeah, quantum physics. We will be back at 11 a.m. I'll pass it to you if there's any admin we want to talk about.